Whatever Next Unplugged. Conversations about making transformation more human, more honest, and more likely to stick. And here's my next guest, Mario Michaels, founder and director of Synaxia Group. Welcome to Whatever Next Unplugged. Today, I've got Mario Michaels. Mario, we first met a couple of years ago. I came on your podcast and we talked about enterprise architecture and where our enterprise architecture sat in the strategic narrative of an organization. And I'm so pleased that you've agreed to come on my podcast, where I'm keen to talk about transformation, how to make it stick, and being more human and more honest. And it's great to have somebody on the show that is recruiting into teams, technical teams maybe, and to hear what you're seeing in the market from a human and technical side. So Mario, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. And I must admit, it's a bit strange being on this side of the on the interview.
It's different. It's definitely different. So Mario, just briefly, just tell us a bit more about what a day in the life is like for Mario, who you're working with, what you're doing. That would be fabulous, just to set the show up.
Sure, yeah. So I run a business called Synaxia Group, which is very much focused on putting people into the right transformation programs. So that can be anything from leadership, CTO, CIO, right the way down to architects and software engineers as well, predominantly from a technical side. That's where the demand is at the moment. We generally tend to work with businesses across UK and US and a little bit in mainland Europe as well, but predominantly at sort of staff level and upwards. So the people that are really shaping, whether it's the technology or shaping a program of work. And that can be anything from pre-seed to Series C, or businesses, large insurance businesses or large businesses up to sort of generally tend to tap out about 5,000 employees. At that point, then it requires a different skill set.
Excellent. So, it's great to be able to have you on the show and to maybe compare and contrast, the different organizations in different stages, maybe also the different organizations around the world. So what are CTOs and founders looking for right now?
I think that's a really good question. I think a lot of the time what they say and what they need are two different things. A lot of them want certainty. I need a solution architect with enterprise integration experience, or I need someone who's done it at scale, or I need a hands-on enterprise architect, whatever that means, who understands both the legacy estate and what we're trying to get to. So really specific, really confident sounding, but actually when you sort of ask 3 or 4 questions deeper, what they actually want is somebody to reduce the risk. Because, most IT leaders, if I think of CIO or CTO, which are predominantly the people I'm speaking to, they generally have a tenure of 3 years at the moment, maybe a little bit longer, which is a transformation program. So effectively, they don't want any exposure. They don't want anything that can reduce that timeline, because roles at that level are very hard to get. So for them, it's how do I keep my job? How can I deliver value? And how do I reduce the risk so I'm not exposed? And as everybody says, you're only as good as your last hire. So programs are drifting, boards asking uncomfortable questions about delivery, stakeholders have lost confidence. The architecture function, for example, is being pulled in too many different directions. So they frame it as a skills problem, because that's the easiest way to describe it. And that's the best way to be able to say, we needed this and we went and got this. It does, like Dulux, it does what it says on the tin. But that's not really the issue, or it's rarely the issue in my experience. It comes down to, firstly, they haven't clearly defined what success looks like in that role. We want this skill set, rather than we want somebody to come and deliver this program of work. And this is what the first 90 days look like. This is what the first 12 months look like? And they'll go off, secondly, they'll go off what they've previously hired that has worked, or what the previous incumbent had hired that the board or the SLT or the exco are happy with. So they're hiring for experience rather than behavior. And that's why you have, if certainly in architecture, if we look at the demographics and, from an age perspective, which often links to experience, not all the time, that's not completely true, but most of the time age links to experience. Majority of architects at a senior level are the ones that have got 15, 20 years experience. Whereas, you could quite easily find somebody who has a little bit less experience, but has demonstrated the right behaviors, a bit more energy or whatever it may be, and might get you the results. But because that's more risky and it's the unknown, or most leaders are not willing to take that risk. And then the final thing, and probably the most common, is they're trying to solve a leadership or an alignment problem with headcount. And again, more often than not, that's not the answer. If the architecture isn't landing with the business, the instinct to add someone, it's always to add someone to it. And that's not right. The real issue might be governance, it might be competing priorities, it might be lack of executive sponsorship, for example. Another hire just adds to that. So I've seen organizations bring in technically exceptional architects who failed within a year, not because they couldn't do the work, but because the role required influence, trust building, and the ability to navigate organizational politics. And the interview process never tested for that. So, in transformation, the best hire is rarely the person with the most impressive program history. It's usually the person that brings that clarity to the people around them and is able to translate really technical lingo to non-technical people. And that's much harder to spot. And I don't think any hiring process is equipped for that level of hire or that type of hiring. I do think there fundamentally needs to be a shift in how businesses interview and hire people.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's a lot that you've said in there, and I guess you're looking there at that top level director leadership role, where there's often been, a IT transformation that's underway. It started with a reorg at the top. They're bringing in those leadership roles, and they're asking for technical solutions and skills, but actually when you start querying and questioning them, it's actually on that influence and that ability to build relationships, which is interesting to recruit for. So how do you go about looking for that hybrid person to fill those sorts of roles? Obviously, you've been asked to go and find a technical leader in enterprise architecture that's going to reduce risk.
Yeah.
They're experienced in the platform area or the domain of architecture, and they have the credentials to do it. How do you go about looking for some of that human angle, which many in the technical field may not demonstrate in their CV or in their original conversations with you?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one because, in full transparency, we have to operate our hiring processes with what the client and the companies want. So, as a reactive search, it's very much interview this person. How do we get along with them? Can you demonstrate where you've influenced people and so on? And then we'll go and speak to people that they've worked with, because it's such a tight market when you've been doing it for so long as we have. You always know somebody in that business or in previous businesses that you can sort of cross-reference. Not a full reference, but, have they done this? Enough to know that they're good. But the way we approach the market is, and similar to when me and you first spoke, Lisa, is we try and build long-term relationships. I've been doing the market now for best part of over a decade. So the ones I initially met 10 years ago, if we're still talking and we're still communicating and we're still part of each other's network, that generally tends to tell me a little bit about communication skills. And then you'll see the business that they've landed on, and over a 3-year period, have they delivered that transformation, or have they brought in a new CIO because that transformation failed? What was this person's involvement in that failure or that success? And you start to hear. So it can only come with time, and this is why businesses really face an uphill struggle, because you don't have that time.
Very
And
interesting.
yeah, and actually, if you could get ahead of it and you start talent pooling and you start speaking to people over a long period of time, and I call it refrigerator recruitment, right? So I coined this from one of my mentors. It's, you've got a bunch of people that are good for your business. You might not be ready to hire them, but when you are, you just open that fridge door and you say, right, we're ready now. You three, we've spoken to you. We need one person basically to come in and do this. We know you've done it before. Are you available? Kind of thing. And that's how we run our as a recruitment business.
That is a really, really interesting. And I think that makes sense to me, because what you're saying is, in a transactional recruitment world, you've got someone who wants a solution architect. They need to be technically fit for the job. You can bring them in, fill a spot, job's done. But
Mm-hmm.
in that transformation space, when it is technical, business and people skills, it is very much that partnership, isn't it? Partnership with the client who's recruiting, and also partnership with the network that you've got, that you already know their progress and what they've done and what they've achieved, and that more people side. So, Mario, AI is booming. Okay. AI is booming. Are you seeing a different type of ask coming from the AI boom technically? Are we going back to a more technical ask or a more human ask with the AI boom?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lisa. I think publicly everyone says they want an architect who can bridge that technical and business gap. People that can sit with a CEO and explain platform decision in 30 seconds, or go back to the engineering team and hold that line on the right technical decision. So communicators, influencers, people who can understand org design as well as system design. But then you look at actually what they've gone and hired, and it's heavily weighted towards technical credentials and delivery track record. And so there's a gap between what leaders say they want and what the actual hiring process actually rewards. AI has added another layer to this. There's significant pressure to bring in architects that understand AI native design, platform architects who have built, on LLMs, data architects who can connect the AI strategy to the data estate, et cetera, et cetera. There's not that many businesses that have delivered that sort of AI transformation yet. So the skill set isn't there. There's people that are working on AI, but actually to deliver an AI program of work is quite sparse at the moment. So there's not that many people with that skill set, but yet everybody's asking for it. So it's a real difficult one, because I think, as certainly over the next 5 years, I think we will start to see the architecture role evolve into a slightly more technical one, to understand what the business what the business needs, how we're going to achieve it. And more often than not, the answer will have a layer of AI in there. So the architect has to understand it inside out and has to understand the capabilities and how it integrates. And now we are actually having more of a technical conversation. But actually, my worry with it is, are we just producing technical architects versus the fundamental part of that discussion was what the business needs rather than what the business wants? And it's that commercially astute architect that will always win, that's able to say, well, you might think you want that, but where's that come from? And actually, what we're trying to achieve here, because if we're trying to achieve A, what we need is B, or here's options B, C, and D. And actually, a really technical architect might not be able to have that discussion. So,
I mean, right now, I get it. I get it that, and it's interesting you're highlighting it. AI is the new hype tech, and anybody who's been in IT for a long time is not experienced in AI. You know, we're all as experienced in AI for as long as AI's been here,
yeah.
not for as long as we've been in the job. Um, and I think I can see from what you're saying that right now, to reduce risk, like you said at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, to reduce risk, everyone has to be looking for those technically capable people that can engineer the AI infrastructure, the AI platform for it to technically work, So it feels like there could be that pendulum going back into recruiting technical engineers, technical architects, technical leaders. And maybe the human side needs to just be put on hold a bit while that technical learning happens and that technical knowledge happens. And anybody who is talking about the technology impacting the business, they're either exceptionally smart, exceptionally quick, or just can grab hold of this thing, because the majority of us are learning about it. So then when you're recruiting the people, you know, when a lot of it is your network, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it are contacts that people probably give you. When they show up and you have the first conversation with someone, so not necessarily someone who's been on your books for a while, but when somebody new rocks up in the technical field, probably been working pre-AI as well
Yeah.
as now in the AI
Yeah.
era, do they show up demonstrating that hybrid set of skills, or do they show up with the technical skills, and because they were born a human, they hope the human side is going to be enough for them?
I think that's a really good question. More often than not, no, but you can tell the ones that do quite quickly, and I don't think businesses sort of I don't think businesses test this, but you know, I always look, do they ask good questions, or do they just answer the ones that they've in front of them? Are they able to explain trade-offs clearly, not what they recommended, but what they decided against and why? Do they default to ownership when a program goes sideways? Do they blame other people, or do they reach for reasons why it wasn't their call? Those sorts of things are sort of quite key sort of traits, and you can pick that up in a conversation. It's just like going, I don't know, I was going to say it's like going to the pub with a mate, but not quite, because you're not going to have that level of conversation. But you can get a sense as to how they're approaching things and how they're driving things and how they're delivering or not delivering, and then what happens when they don't deliver. You know, it's that have they self-reflected? Have they used that emotional intelligence to critically analyze what they could have done better, or have they just said, oh well, you know, we gave it to engineering, they didn't deliver it, we got the blame for it, it wasn't our fault? That's not really what you want. You want somebody to, I always think as an architect in particular, you especially at enterprise, you are responsible for the enterprise. Now, you're not responsible for managing everyone, but you are responsible for delivering what you said you were going to deliver at an enterprise level. Otherwise, you're not an enterprise architect. If you can't influence people and you can't drive those decisions and you can't make those trade-offs and you can't, you know, really get under the skin of what's not working and what is working, then effectively you're not an enterprise architect, or you're not an
No, I
architect.
agree. That's so true. And I guess here we're talking about transformation, you know, and there's the running the IT operation, maintaining the operation, you know, upgrading the IT operation, which is very technical. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the transformation, and those points you're covering, you know, the trade-offs, the rationale behind decisions, which way should we go next? Where should we aim for? That's very much the transformation space. And enterprise architects playing in the transformation space, they do they do need both. They need the technical capability, but they do need to be able to take accountability for the decisions. So if we look forward, Mario, and you look out to 26, 27, and you look across the globe, and we look at everything from the hardcore security end of technology
Yeah.
to the AI part of technology to the consumer end of technology. Where do you see the opportunities for the hybrid human and technical people to show up in? What sort of roles would they be in? What sort of companies might they be in? You know, where should someone who's interested in delivering both technically and on the human side look for? And where should they maybe turn away from because it will always be too technical?
I don't think anything will be too technical as we go into the future. So I've spoken to 5 architect leaders this week alone who are sat there on Claude Code building platforms to help them do their job. I'm testing Claude Code at the moment and I have no technical prowess whatsoever. It's, vibe coding is so easy to do. Now, whether you're doing it to a good level, that's a different sort of kettle of fish, so to speak. But I think the real winners are going to be the ones that are learning it now and in 12 months' time have built enough, I'm not saying become a staff level engineer, but enough engineering knowledge on how to do things, what to do, why you're doing things, to be able to push back to the business, to be able to push back to the engineers, to just get an understanding of how it all works. So I think if you're an enterprise architect now and you've been away from technology for the past 5 years, my recommendation would be get close to that technology, because most, if not all, transformation programs will be technology led or driven in the next 5 years, specifically with AI. So get under the hood of how it all works and what you can and the capabilities and what you can't do. That would be my first thing. I think from a business perspective, technology leaders need to start asking sharper questions around not if they've done it before, but how does this person make decisions when all the information isn't there? Because architects are really well known for, can't make a decision on that because I don't have all the information. They're going to have to make decisions without all the information, and that sounds quite risky, but I do think that's where we're going to get to, because technology is forever changing and you can't do a 5-year roadmap these days, because what you write today is going to be out of date next week. From that, then will come, well, if they're making the right decisions, then the business will start trusting them, the people will start trusting them, and then you're into a different narrative there. And I suppose rather than skills hiring and even behavior hiring, measure your architecture hiring or your technical hiring in general around the outcomes. Like, look back, when was the last time you looked back at your hiring policy and thought, right, we've hired 10 architects this year. What were the measures? What did we want them to deliver in their first year, and did they deliver them? And if not, why not? And those that did, what support did we give them to make them do it? What's the common denominator that we can fix straight away in our hiring process? Because again, you've got to get your people strategy right and your talent attraction right and then your talent retention right before you can even think about any form of transformation, because it's the reason I built the business, or my business, sorry, was around people are the greatest asset for any business. It's not technology, because the technology can be sat there unless you've got somebody who's capable of extracting what the technology can do and plugging it into the right areas and making sure it's in the right place. You can have the best technology in the world. It's the people that build it. It's the people that are able to do that really unlocks the next level. And fundamentally, that's my belief, and that's why I built my business, to go and find the best people in the market and put them with the best businesses in the market. So, an architecture function that performs well in transformation are almost never just built on technical alone. It's those that combine the rigor, the influence, the structure, and the pragmatism, the ability to hold that long-term vision whilst being agile enough to change how we get to that long-term vision. They're the best architects.
The next era is here. It's AI. We've all got that opportunity to understand it, work out where to apply it, and make that beneficial to the organizations we work in. Because it will be a game changer. It is a game changer, and it is here. So, that is where the transformations are going to be. The transformations are going to be in taking what was bricks and mortar that went to digital to now is the era of AI. Anybody on that transformation journey right now definitely needs to marry up the technical and the business side. Maybe more technical, you're saying, in the short term, as people really understand the technology, understand how they can pipe it all together. But once that's all piped together, once that infrastructure's there, it's going to be very much that hybrid role that can apply the technology in the right place and get the right results.
So we touched on the technical side, go and learn AI, but the people that are technical, go and do a sales course, because it is the most underrated skill, and it's going to be the most useful skill in the future. I genuinely believe that if you can ask the right questions, it's all the stuff we learned when we were first training as recruiters. Ask the right questions, build long-term relationships, build that trust, build that credibility. That's all part of sales. If you're really good technically, go and learn that bit, because that's the bit that's going to get you in the road.
So you're brilliantly saying, transformation, you've been in the technology space. The best thing you can do is go in on some sales training to be able to ask the right questions, look for the opportunities, and really make business happen.
Fundamentally believe that. I do fundamentally believe that. And we talk about, in America, they talk about this 10x engineer. Well, I think we're going to find a 10x architect soon. And the skill set that an AI or AI can't do is the human side, which is the selling, the influencing, that trust building. No one's ever going to be able to do that with AI. So go and learn that.
Brilliant. I mean, that human side is going to be important, isn't it?
It's
to make transformations stick. Mario, Thank you for being on the show. Who knows what shows we're going to be on next, but thank you for being on Whatever Next Unplugged.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Whatever Next Unplugged. Conversations about making transformation more human, more honest, and more likely to stick. Find out more at whatevernextbook.com.